Winston Churchill said it. It's on your screen because it's a great quote. In every age, there comes a time when a leader must come forward to meet the needs of the hour. Therefore, there is no potential leader who does not have an opportunity to make a positive difference in society. And when the hour is the darkness, this is our moment. So let me talk to you briefly about how to turn on the light. Jesus said we're to be salt, we're to be light. I'm going to give you just some very simple thoughts quickly. Number one, if you really want to turn on the light, and you really want to lead well during dark times, and you just really want to have that solid foundation, number one, get over yourself. My name's John, I'm your friend. Please, get over yourself. Let me explain something to you. It's not about you. The first step in leadership is to get over yourself. The first step in connecting with people is to get over yourself. The first step in communicating is to get over yourself. I tell people all the time, and they say, I want to be a great communicator. I said, number one, just get over yourself. Get over the day that you're more concerned about helping people than how you look. All of a sudden, good things begin to happen. It's the key to serving others. It's the key to influencing others. And by the way, the get over yourself is the Maxwell translation. Jesus said, if you want to be first, you have to be last. Yes, you do. And if you want to rule, you have to serve. You want to live, you have to die. He was just saying, get over yourself. One of the reasons I love coming to Grow, because it's so important and it's so clear. In fact, I said to Chris today, I said, Chris, you are so clear in what you're teaching us that it's convicting. It's very convicting. I mean, don't we wish that he was a lot more unclear? Wouldn't it be wonderful? We kind of left Grow and said, I have no idea. My gosh, I just tried to follow him. He's just, woo, woo, woo. Wouldn't it be wonderful? No, he's so clear. It's convicting. When I was pastor in San Diego, I did a summer series on success principles in the life of the Apostle Paul. And I love the study of, because he's such an incredible leader himself, so I always love reading Paul and that whole process. But when I was working on this series, I came to what I thought was the key to his success. I mean, obviously, called, anointed. There was a spiritual dimension. But I think that there was a reason that God could use him. And the secret of Paul's success is he didn't have to survive. He truly knew what it was like to get over himself. There's one scripture, we're just going to go one passage in Acts 20. And here's what Paul's saying. He said, there's an urgency before me now, and I feel compelled to go to Jerusalem. I'm completely in the dark about what will happen when I get there. I do know there won't be any picnic. For the Holy Spirit has let me know repeatedly and clearly that there are hard times and imprisonment ahead. Don't miss these words. But that matters little. What matters most to me is to finish what God started. The job that Master Jesus gave me of letting everyone I meet know all about this incredible, extravagant generosity of God. You see, Paul said, I know that when I leave you, I'm going to be in prison. He said, he says, I know what is in front of me is very dark and very difficult. But the reason that Paul was so successful is he didn't have to survive. He'd already died. He'd already died to self. He understood what it was to be crucified with Christ. He understood this exchange. And I don't want you to miss this. I mean, what are you going to do with the Apostle Paul? You say, Paul, we don't like your preaching. We're going to threaten you. And Paul's going to say, that's been done before. Paul, if you continue on, we're going to put you in prison. Oh my gosh. Could I go back to Philippi? You know, when I was in prison there, the guard was almost saved when they let me out. Paul, just shut up. We're going to kill you. Oh, would you please? To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. What are you going to do with the Apostle Paul? Absolutely nothing. Why? He didn't have to survive. Part of our problem is Christians want to survive too much. And it breaks my heart. I was totally surprised by many things about COVID, but I was mostly surprised about the fear factor. I would have hoped that as Christians, we could have lived above the world. I know in my world, which is the business world, it was my greatest year of witnessing and sharing my faith, because when people would talk about fear, I just say, oh my gosh, I understand. It's pretty tough, uncertain times. Oh man, you know what I wish? What do you wish? Just between you and me. I wish you had my faith. Why? What do you have? Well, I just have a God that helps me deal with these anxieties and fears. Oh my gosh, this was the greatest year of witnessing I've ever seen because I didn't fall in the trap of being one more fearful Christian. Okay. I love the applause, we just don't have time. The first thing, get over yourself. You got that one? In fact, look at your neighbor and say, get over yourself. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. This is so good. Okay, I'm going to number 2, but you got to let me have some pleasure here. Wasn't it fun? Looking at your neighbor and say, would you get over yourself? How many of you, that was an answer of prayer? I just opened the door for you've been wanting to tell that person for so long to get over themselves, and I'm your John the Baptist, I just opened up the way. If you want to turn on the light, number 2, I'll have to explain this one. Move to the center of the wheel. This is all about emotional capacity. This is all about emotional strength, the ability to handle adversity, failure, criticism, change, pressure in a very positive way. And by the way, instability. In times of stability, leaders make history, but in times of instability, history makes leaders. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. We did miss it. We had a chance to be made as leaders in the Christian community. And sadly, just sadly, some of us missed that opportunity. This has been, since 2000, we've had continual chaos. 2000 began with the Y2 bug, and then the dot-com bubble burst, then 9/11, then the corporate scandals. And I've got a list of whole things. I don't have time. But we have been in continued chaos in this entire century. Are you with me? Now, the question is this. Are we going to be emotionally strong and be a security for our people? Or are we going to get in that same stream and get swept and drifted away? Okay, I'm going to tell you a great book you want to read. Anything that Tom Morris writes, I write. Okay, he's a secular writer. But I do a lot of secular reading because I live in a secular world. I got to connect. And Tom Morris had a book called Plato's Lemonade Stand. It's a great book. You're going to thank me, okay? Okay, here's what Plato says, or here's what Tom Morris says. Okay, are you ready? This is about stability. It's on your screen. Imagine life, because remember the point here. What's the point? We're talking about emotional strength and stability. Move to the center of the wheel. Okay, here we go. Stability. Imagine life was a big wagon wheel, and if we emotionally live on the outer rim, when that wheel turns, we are spun around in extreme highs and lows in rapid and dizzying succession. But if we can learn to move closer to the midpoint of the hub, we become much more centered. The wheel will spin, but we won't be so dramatically thrown about by its motion. So the question is very simple. How do I move to the center of the wheel? How do I get in that place where I'm not like everyone else? 3 thoughts, because I've worked hard on moving to the center of the wheel. And I'm going to give you my 3 questions that I ask myself that just help me get there. My first question is, what is my definition of success? I want to encourage every one of you to get your own definition of success. So that when somebody else comes around, because success means a lot of things to a lot of people, it's very subjective. So when people come around and you're trying to be successful and you're trying to be like someone else and you're looking for validation from someone else, by the way, when you're looking for validation on the outside, it's because you lack strong values on the inside. That's a whole study. It's a whole huge study. And so in the 1980s, I was in a very good part of my life, and I was pastoring. I had the 10th largest church in America, and life was good, and they just got done writing a book about us, and it was pretty amazing, and I was writing books, and things were going really good, and then I was looking around, and I was seeing a lot of people that I thought were successful, and I saw their life came crashing down, and so I said, I've got to get my own definition of success, and so I got it, and I wrote it down, and it serves me well. To me, success is very simple. Those closest to me love and respect me the most. That's my definition of success. Let me explain that to you because it's so beautiful. This is success on the inside. This is how you build, this is how I built my success foundation. This is where you get solid. This is where you get to the center of will. Do not miss this. Those closest to me love and respect you the most. Can I tell you something? There's something wrong with any of us if people who don't know us well like us better than those who know us well. There's an amazing credibility issue. So I just said, okay, I got to get centered. And the way I'm going to get centered, the way I'm going to get to the center of the will is success for me. It's just going to be very simple. And that is those who are closest to me love and respect me the very most. That was success on the inside. That allowed me then, once the inside is right, the outside can expand. You see, our goal should not be to be bigger. My friend Truett Cathy in the Chick-fil-A Foundation, early years, the board was pushing to more stores. We need to get bigger, we need to get better. And Truett Cathy said, no. He said, we need to get better. He said, if we get better, the customer will demand that we get bigger. We gotta be, which brings me to the second point. We've got to be bigger on the inside than we are on the outside. We've got to be bigger on the inside than we are on the outside. You see, we all have these emotions, positive and negative, within us. And I've never been able to erase all the negative emotions of my life. I've never been able to erase fear. When people say, well, I have no fear, I say, and what drugs are you taking? I have questions, I have anxieties, I have uncertainties. Are you with me? You see, the question is not, do I have some negative parts of my emotional that will have a tendency to bring me down. The question is, I'm talking about being bigger now on the inside than the outside. I'm talking about getting to the center of that will. Here's the question. The question is not, do I have some fears? Do I have some questions? Do I have some anxious time? That isn't the question. The question is my faith, which is a positive emotion, stronger than my fear? Because if my faith is stronger than my fear, I will then operate as a person of faith. If my fear is stronger than my faith, I will operate as a person of fear. And the thing that has pretty much amazed me again is when I look at Christians, I say, oh my gosh, you would think that they had no God. Are you kidding me? Is that your best? Let me take you to C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, of course, had an incredible, not only life-changing ministry during World War II in Britain, but today he still incredibly touches our lives. So I'm going to go to an article he wrote in 1948 entitled Living in an Atomic Age. This is when the atomic bomb and the atomic age was coming and what would happen if a bomb was dropped. And although these words were written 73 years ago, they are as relevant today as they were then. And just take the atomic bomb and just substitute it for the coronavirus. It's on your screen so you can read it with me. In one way, we think a great deal too much, oh yes, of the atomic bomb. How are we to live in atomic age? I am tempted to reply, why? As you would have lived in the 16th century, when the plague visited London almost every year. Or as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night. Or indeed, as you're already living in the age of cancer, age of syphilis, age of paralysis, age of air raids, the age of railway accidents, the age of motor accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. He just defined gross immaturity. And I am so sick and tired of listening to gross immaturity. I expect more out of leaders. I expect you not to be swept away by the emotions and the fears about them. I would expect you to stand to give security to people that are drifting. Okay, back to C.S. Lewis. He's much better than me. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented. I don't have to survive. Are you seeing the theme here? Don't miss it. And quite a high percentage of us, we're going to die in unpleasant ways. And it's perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of a painful and premature death to a world which is already bristled with such chances and in which death itself was not a chance at all. It's a certainty. Some of you are acting like if you're fearful, you'll get out of life alive. I may lead worship tomorrow. I could break into a moon dance anytime. Don't miss it. Back to C.S. Lewis. He's never been interrupted quite like this. This is the first point to be made, and the first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. If we are all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things. Praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children. Come on! Playing the game, chatting with our friends, and a game of darts. Come on! You don't have to go there. You don't have to be that way. You can rise above this. Not huddled. Not huddled. Together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies, but they need not dominate our minds. Chris and I know that we want to, this bigger on the inside than the outside. It's all about values. I spoke of it just briefly a moment ago, and the fact that if I have strong values within me, I need less validation outside of me. But we live in a culture that has not been valued and has not learned good values. And so we seek validation all the time. I didn't realize how incredible aware I was of social media. I was way ahead of the time. I remember when I was in the 3rd grade. Honest to God, Wanda sat right beside me, and she was so pretty. And I said, Wanda, I love you. Do you love me? Check this box. Honest to God, what's wrong with us? I'll tell you, we don't have a foundation. We don't have the core. We don't have the values. So Chris sent this to me the other day. He said, another reason why we need values. This is good, Chris. The founder of Dubai, Sheikh Rashid, was asked about the future of his country, and he replied, my grandfather rode a camel, my father rode a camel, I ride a Mercedes, my son rides a Land Rover, and my grandson is going to ride a Land Rover, but my great-grandson is going to have to ride a camel again. Why is that? He was asked in his reply, hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create difficult times. Many will not understand it, but you have to raise warriors, not parasites. And you have to add to that historical reality that all great empires, not some, all great empires, the Persians, Trojans, Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the British, all rose and perished within 240 years. And they were not conquered by external enemies. They rotted from within. Okay, stay right with me. To be in the center of the wheel, we got to ask ourselves 3 questions. What's my definition of success? Am I bigger on the inside than I'm on the outside? And 3 is, who is my source? Back to Plato's lemonade stand. He said Plato took a stand on unchanging values as the ultimate leverage that we have for grappling with this unpredictable world. He was convinced that we can attain true success in life only if we first understand the things that never change and use them well as our reference points for moving forward productively through life's uncertainties. This is a secular writer, and he says centuries later, Jesus of Nazareth talked about building the structure of your life on a solid foundation of unyielding rock, rather on shifting sands that provide no support. Skip the rest of it. I've been a little bit of a time crunch, but I've got to do this because it works. I had an incredible spiritual, life-changing experience during COVID. And I would take my walks every day. Why was I taking walks? Because I wasn't traveling. I wasn't speaking anywhere. And I'd read Psalm 112. Praise the Lord for all who trust in God, who are blessed beyond expression. And when darkness overtakes him, light will come bursting into him. And such a man will not be overthrown by evil circumstances. Don't miss this. God's constant care of him will make a deep impression on all who see it. And I would walk and I'd say, I want your constant care of me to make a deep impression on all who see it. And I don't want to get down there drifting with the rest of them in this incredible fear issue and them not see the difference between a person of faith and a person of fear. Listen to these words. He does not fear bad news, nor live in dread of what may happen. Why? For it is settled in his mind that God will take care of him. Come on now. God's going to take care of you. I'd read that every day as I would take my walk. One last closing thing. Sorry. Give me 2 more minutes. We need to begin with the end in mind. We not only need to move to the center of the wheel and get over ourselves, but we need to begin with the end in mind. The 7 habits of highly successful people. Stephen Covey just teaches us habit number 2. Before you can live a meaningful life, you've got to know what it looks like. Another person I read all the time is David Brooks. There are just certain authors you just need to read all the time. And he had a great book called The Road to Character. And he talks about 2 kinds of virtues. Resume virtues and eulogy virtues. Resume virtues is what I show when I want employment and I want to impress somebody. Here's what I've done and this is who I am and would you hire me? And that's what we know what a resume virtue is. But he said a eulogy virtue, he said that's much deeper. He said that's who you really are. That's the core of your being. So I've tried to live my life with the end in mind. Several years ago, I decided that I wanted to finish well, and on my iPhone, several years ago now, I wrote these words. It'll come on your screen. I will be bigger on the inside than the outside. Character matters. I will follow the golden rule. People matter. I will value humility above all virtues. Perspective matters. I will travel the high road of life because attitude matters. I will teach only what I believe. Passion matters. I will reach people for Christ. Souls matter. I will daily develop myself. Growth matters. I'll be salt and light. Evangelism matters. I will finish well. Faithfulness matters. And I'll play the infinite game. Legacy matters. What we're going to do, let's call this teaching, since I've never given it before. Let's call this teaching the Rule of 5 for leading. The Rule of 5 for leading. And in a moment, I'm going to explain to you how the Rule of 5 works, which is in itself tremendously life-changing. But what I'm going to do today is I sat down, I was up in San Francisco doing some writing for the last 2 days on another book. And I sat down and I wrote this out. I wrote this out and I want to give this to you. So I want you to look at the person you're side and say, John's never done this before, okay? John, he says, it's never done this before. Okay? And tell that your neighbor, and he's doing it for us because we're special, okay? We're special, okay? Okay. Okay. Because again, if I'm going to have a relationship with this organization, your leaders, and you, I want to come fresh. I want to come with teaching that really is where you're living and where you're going. And I know that you are the leaders of this organization. That as you go, the organization, the company goes. I know that. So let me. I'm going to talk to you. Let me talk to you a little bit about leadership. I wrote a book about 13 years ago called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Okay. How many of you have that book? Would you raise your hand? Okay, good. Yeah. In fact, let me do it one more time, and this time raise both hands so it'll look like twice as many. That's the best-selling leadership book ever written. It's sold millions of copies. It's sold over 1 million copies in China alone, where I go twice a year to teach and lecture. And the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. If you don't have it, you want to get it, because that's absolutely the foundation for understanding leadership and how to lead and what you need to know to be a better leader. And for the teaching today, I'm going to take the first law, the law of the lid, L-I-D, and I'm going to teach the law of the lid for not long, 3 to 5 minutes.
and then I'm going to teach the rule of 5, and then I'm going to share with you 5 things that you need to do in the rule of 5 to lift your leadership lid to get and be a better leader. So let me just teach you the law of the lid. The law of the lid just simply says that your ability to lead will determine how well you succeed. In other words, the better you lead, the more you'll succeed. The better leader you are, the larger organization you can develop. The better leader you are, the larger your following, the greater your influence will be. The law of the lid is an amazing law, and it basically says that as you learn to lead, you will grow and be more successful. And the better that you lead, the more successful you will become. Now, for teaching purposes on the law of the lid, I want you to look up at me and let me just give you a visual so that we can kind of make sure we got this, okay? If let's say, for example, if this is my leadership lid, this is how well John Maxwell leads, okay? This is my lid. I don't go any higher than this lid. This is my leadership lid. This is how well I lead. And let's just say I'm an average leader, so it's a 5. I'm a 5. From a 1 to a 10, I'm a 5 leader. If that's the case, if this is my leadership lid, this is how well I lead, what the law of the lid teaches is that my business, your business, what you do with Vasalis right now, your business will come under your leadership lid, but it will never get any better or go any higher or grow any farther than what your ability to lead is. So that your leadership lid literally determines the level of your success. So if I'm a 4 as a leader, what that means is that my business will be a 4. Or if I'm a 5 as a leader, my business will be a 4. Does that make sense? Now, even in a great organization like this, my leadership lid will determine the level of my success. Now, when I began to understand the leadership lid, and I began to teach the leadership lid, all of a sudden everything began to change. Because you see, it was in 1974 that I came to the conclusion, after studying successful people for 5 years, from 69 to 74, after really looking and watching successful people, I came to the conclusion that everything rises and falls on leadership. And when I say everything rises and falls on leadership, you say, John, what do you mean everything rises and falls on leadership? What I mean is everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, what part of that don't you get? I didn't say some things. I didn't say most things. I didn't say 99% of the things. I said everything rises and falls on leadership. In fact, I know it. I believed it in 1974. I started studying leadership. I started teaching leadership. I started leading a long time ago. But now in 2013, I'm more convinced than ever that everything rises and falls on leadership. And one of the reasons I am is because I've developed the largest leadership training company in the world. We're in 174 countries. We've trained 6 million leaders. In fact, we are now training 1 million leaders every 10 months. And we're 2 years away from training 1 million leaders every 6 months. And by 2020, we'll train 1 million new leaders every month around the world. And so when the United Nations asked me to do the opening assembly to all the ambassadors, they said, come in and talk about leadership. The reason they asked me to do that is because we teach leadership, and in 2 years, we'll be in every country of the world teaching leadership. And I understand leadership. I know how to train leaders. I know how to teach leaders. I understand leadership. It's been my life. It's been my life for a long, long time. And in 74, I was convinced everything rises and falls on leadership. And can I tell you, 2013, I know, without any question, everything rises and falls on leadership. So how well I lead will determine how well I succeed. So this is huge. I've got to become a better leader. And the question people ask me all the time is, can I become a better leader? They'll ask me the question like, John, are leaders born? When they ask me, are leaders born, I always give them the same answer. Of course they are. Come on now, think of that question for a moment, huh? I've never met an unborn leader. Huh? Hey, don't particularly want to either, thank you very much. So when they ask me, are leaders born? I know what they're not really asking, are they born? What they're really asking is, are there some people when they're born, they got it? And some people when they're born, they don't got it. And if you got it, you go to the front of the line. If you don't got it, you go to the back of the line. That's what they're asking. And I've got great news for you. And I do believe, I have no question about it, that there are some people that are born with what I call leadership leanings. No doubt about that. Just like some people are born with kind of a musical leaning. No doubt. But the great news is, because I've done this for so long, and I've done this with so many over such a long period of time in every country of the world, what I know is you can learn to lead. You can learn to lead. You can learn to be a better leader than you are right now. You can grow as a leader. In fact, look at the person you're sitting beside and say to them, even you can learn to lead. Wow. Isn't that amazing? You weren't sure about that person, were you, huh? You weren't sure they could really learn, but now you got to even they can learn to lead. Now, let's go back to this law. If I'm a 5 as a leader, that means my organization will be what? Talk to me. A 4. Okay, here we go. Because the leadership lid won't allow it to go higher. So, how do I grow my organization? This is very simple, folks. I've got to raise my lid, don't I? I've got to get this lid up, and because I can become a better leader, I can raise my lid, true? So I can go from a 5 to a 6, to a 7, to an 8, to a 9. Now, this organization is a 4. When that leadership lid starts going up, that organization goes from a 4 to a 5, to a 6, to a 7, to an 8. You see, your organization will grow to the size of your leadership ability. Now, if I were where you are and I was listening to what I just said, and I was taking notes, somewhere on my notes or somewhere on my iPad, I'd be putting a star right here. I'd be putting a rocket ship. I would be putting a sign that says, "Do not miss this." Because your ability to lead will determine how successful you'll be in this house, without any question. The best leaders will build the biggest business. No question. That should light a fire within you. That should spark, something should be going off on the inside right now. You see, everything rises and falls on leadership, and I've got to raise my leadership lid, and Maxwell says I can learn how to lead, and the better I learn how to lead, the bigger I can build this business. There ought to be something inside of you that says something like this: I had better learn to lead. Hello, this is an IQ test. If you miss this one, you can go home now. Vicelis can't help you. God can't help you. You understand? The whole concept, the whole idea that you can learn to lead, and if you learn to lead, and the better you learn to lead, the more successful you can become, and the greater your business. This is an absolute fact. It's not a theory, it's not a thought, it's not an idea, it's not a principle, it's a fact. And the law of the lid says, the better you learn to lead, the higher you lift that lid, the greater your business can become. Now, that's the law of the lid. So the question that I have today, and as I was talking on the phone to your leaders the other day, the question I have is then, well, how do I lift that lid? How do I lift that lid? If that's the key, then John, come on, let's get that lid lifted. And by the way, you're in luck because I know how to do that. Yeah, I really do. I ain't bragging, just living it, okay? I know how to do that. In fact, look at your neighbor and say, John can help us. Go ahead and tell you. John can help us. And look at your neighbor and say, and you need John to help you. Okay. All right, okay. Now, John can help you. Trust me on this. I know how to lift the lid. Now, to help you lift the lid, let me teach you the rule of 5. Now, the rule of 5 I can teach for 2 hours. So understand, I'm going to try to do this in 3 minutes. But I can with you because you're smarter than these other organizations. You understand? Okay, all right. With some, it's a week conference. Okay. With some, a week doesn't matter. Still doesn't take. Okay. The rule of 5 is the most life-changing concept for focusing on success that I have ever taught, that I've ever lived. So I'm just going to drop it on you just enough to help you understand the 5 concept, to help you understand the 5 things you need to do to lift your leadership lid. The rule of 5 just simply says, if you have a tree in your backyard that you want to cut down, and you have an axe, if every day you pick up that axe and you go to that tree and you swing 5 times with that axe to hit that tree, put the axe down. The next day you go out, pick up the axe, swing 5 times at the tree. Put the axe down. The next day you go out, pick up the axe, and 5 more times you swing at that tree. 5 times. Every day you pick up the axe, and only 5, not 50, not 15, not 500. 5. If you swing 5 times a day at that tree with that axe every day, let me ask you a question. What eventually is going to happen to that tree? That tree is going to... Now, there's no question about that, is there? There's any doubt. You don't have to sit around the table and kind of say, do you think it will? Let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya and hope. If you swing 5 times a day at that tree every day, that tree will fall. End of story. Now, if it's a big tree, it may take a couple years. If it's a little tree in your backyard, I don't know, maybe in a month you could knock that baby down. I don't see. Now, the size of the tree will determine how long it takes for it to fall. But that's not what we're debating here. What we're teaching here is if you swing 5 times a day at that tree, every day the tree will fall. Now, that's the rule of 5. The rule of 5 says, find your tree. What's your goal in life? What's your purpose? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to knock down? Where's your axe? What are your tools? What are your tools? What do you want to knock down? Where's your axe? What do you want to knock down? Where's your axe? What do you want to knock down? Where's your axe? What do you want to knock down? Where's your axe? What do you want to knock down? Where's your axe? What is it that you're going to use to effectively go after that goal 5 times a day? What is it? Because whatever that is, if you use it 5 times a day, every day, you'll be highly successful. For example, I write books. So let me just put that in writing for a moment. I've written 73 books. Jason, that was a nice introduction. It's 22 million, not 19. But what's 2 or 3 million? Give a little, take a little here, a little there. People say, John, how have you written 73 books? Oh, thank you for asking. The rule of 5. You see, there are 5 things I do every day that allows me to write that many books. It's not magic. It's not that I'm brilliant. It's just that I know the rule of 5. The rule of 5. You see, every day I read. Every day I file. Every day I think. Every day I ask questions, and every day I write. Every day I do those 5 things every day. Every day I read, every day I file, every day I think, every day I ask questions, every day I write, every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions, every day I write, every day I think, every day I read, every day I ask questions, every day I file, every day I write, every day I write, every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions. Yes, I can do it in different orders, but every day. Doesn't matter whether you swing the axe left-handed or right-handed, you just got to hit the tree. Every day I read, file, think, ask questions, write, read, think, file, ask questions, write, read, think, file, ask questions, write. You say, now, John, what do you mean by every day? This is where it gets a little long sometimes. What I mean by every day is every day. Now, you say, now, when you say every day, do you mean, do you do that on Sunday? Every Sunday, I read, think, file, ask questions, write. Do you do that on your birthday? Every birthday. Guess what? Every birthday I read, think, file, ask questions, write. Do you do that on Christmas? Guess what I do every Christmas? Every Christmas I read, think, file, ask questions, write. Do you do this when you're not feeling well? Can I tell you when I'm not feeling well? Even I'm not feeling well. Guess what I do every day? Every day when I'm not feeling well, I think, write, ask questions. Do all those things. Every day. You say, every day? At the age of 17, I started filing. I've never missed a day. I don't have 100 quotes. I don't have 1,000 quotes. I have tens of thousands of quotes. I don't have 100 stories. I don't have 1,000 stories. I have 10,000 stories. Where did you get all those stories? Where did you get all those quotes? Well, let me tell you something. Guess what I do every day? See, we overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate what we can do in several days. And you got to understand, the secret of success is not the fact that, hey, I didn't say, hey, some days I get up and I write for 12 hours. No. I didn't say I write all day. I didn't say I read all day. I didn't say I think all day. I didn't say I ask questions all day. I just said every day. Every day. You see, doing a little bit every day is a lot more important than doing a lot someday. And most people live in someday. Well, I'll tell you what, I think I'll get to that. You know what? I think I'll try that. You know what? I believe I got. Now, here's the key. You got to figure out what the 5 are. It took me 7 years to find my 5 for writing. You say, man, John, you're slow. I am. It won't take you 7 years. But it'll take you a long period of time. I could get the first 2 quickly, but the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, it took me 4 years to get the last one. Now, forget writing. Because this isn't about writing a book. This is about leading. And what I'm going to do is I sat up in my hotel in San Francisco, and I wrote out what I think is the rule of 5 for leading. And I'm going to give it to you. And I've never given it to anybody else. You're the first ones to get it. So look at your neighbor and say, we're the first ones. Go ahead and tell them. We're the first ones. We're the first ones. Okay. You got it? We're the first ones. Okay. Hey, and since you're the first ones, don't blow it. You understand? Okay, I'm going to give you, if you can do these 5 things, the rule of 5 for leading, you will lift your leadership lid. How many of you want to lift your leadership lid? Okay, these 5 things we're going to give them to you. And by the way, they're all simple. They're all simple. You can do all 5. You can do all 5. They're simple. Think about my rules for writing. Every day I read. You can read, can't you? Every day I think. Every day I file. Every day, no. See, the things that will bring you success are not complicated. They're simple. I'm a communicator, not an educator. Now, I have an education. I got 3 degrees, but I'm not an educator. An educator takes something simple and makes it complicated. Yeah, my father was a university president for 17 years. I know university stuff really well. An educator, they just take something simple and make it complicated. If you're not confused, they're not happy. A communicator takes something complicated and makes it simple. I'm a communicator. My name's John. I'm your friend. I'm a communicator. And I know how to communicate. I know how to put the cookies on the lower shelf. Yeah, sure. Might as well have some. I've been having some. I know how to put the cookies on the, and you, what I'm going to share with you about leading, you can do this, but you can't do this in a day, and you can't do this in a week, and you can't even do this in a month. You can't do this in a year. This is a lifetime of living this rule of 5. Are you with me? It's a lifetime. So there's no quick fixes here. There's no magic. But you can do this. Okay. Let me give you the first one. The first of the rule of 5 for lifting your leadership lid is lead yourself. Lead yourself. Now you say, John, when you say lead myself, what do you mean? What I mean is lead yourself. You see, when we think of leadership, we always think of someone else, don't we? We think, okay, I'm going to rule, that's rule of 5 for leading, lifting my leadership lid. All right, I got to go find some people. Got to find some people. Okay. Find some people. No. Before you lead someone else, you need to lead yourself. I was doing a leadership conference, been speaking all day, doing Q&A the last session. A kid with an MBA stood up. He said, John, I love your leadership principles. My goodness. He said, I'm sitting here all day. He said, I'm an MBA student. I'm still in school. I don't even graduate till this spring. And he said, I kept listening to you, and I kept thinking, boy, I wish I had somebody to lead. I wish I had somebody to lead. I wish I had somebody to lead. I wish I had a company. I wish I had a department. I wish I had somebody to lead. He said, I don't have anybody to lead. He said, where should I start? He said, good question. Start with you. Let me put it this way. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else follow you? So what do I mean? I'm talking about leading by example. I'm talking about having the leadership qualities within you that you want to teach someone else. Having the leadership values within you that you want to impart to someone else. I'm talking about visually leading people, because leadership is visual. It's a visual responsibility, and it's a visual act. Nobody has ever said to you, I am following a great leader, I just have never found him or known him. No, you're taking drugs. Every person that you've ever followed, you saw. Every person that you ever said, I want to follow, that person has had an influence on you. And listen to me very carefully, because the most important motivational principle in leadership life is this: people do what people see. So when they follow you as a leader, it's not what you say to them that makes you effective, it's what they see in you. Let's go to the 21 laws of leadership for just a moment. The 21 laws of leadership. The law of magnetism. The law of magnetism simply says, we attract who we are, not who we want. Oh my. That is so good. No wonder that book has done so well. It'll change your life. We attract who we are, not who we want. I run into people all the time, and they come to me and they say, John, I'm developing a group. I'm starting an organization here, and I'm getting people to buy in. And John, I'm all excited, and I look up and say, what kind of people do you want to be attracted to your organization? What kind of people do you want to bring in? What kind of people do you want to recruit? And they'll say, you know what, I want people with energy. Oh, I want energy. I like energy support. I want people with energy. And I'll tell you what else I want. I want people with a character. I want somebody who has some integrity and an attitude. Oh, I want somebody who has a good attitude. Okay. And they start listing all these qualities they look for. And I'll let them list 3, 4, 5. It doesn't matter. But when they get to 5, I stop. I say, wait a minute. Hold it. Okay, you want somebody with energy? Yeah. You want somebody with character? Yeah. Well, I want somebody with good attitude. Yeah. That's what I want. That's what I want. Stop. I don't care what you want. I got a question to ask you. Do you have energy? Do you have character? Do you have a great attitude? You see, if you have energy, a character, and a great attitude, guess what you attract? Birds of a feather. See, like begets like attracts like. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Before you ask somebody to follow you, make sure you have your own act together. You see, too many leaders, they're like travel agents. They send people where they've never been themselves. My name's John. And I'm your friend. Yeah, they're travel agents. They've never been there themselves, but they're always sending other people there. They've never experienced it. They've never lived it. They've never fleshed it out. They're not living it. They get up and they think, I'll just cast a vision. I'll just cast a vision. Boy, I'll just say, all right, here's the great way. People don't want to follow your finger. They want to follow you. Quit pointing. Quit talking. Talk's cheap. Any person that hasn't succeeded can talk. We teach what we know, but we reproduce what we are. Oh yeah, it's brilliant. When you've done this for 40 plus years, it's brilliant. It's not that I'm brilliant, it's just that I've done it so long. After a while, I catch on. We teach what we know, but we reproduce what we are. So if you're wanting to raise up some great leaders in your group, guess what? The first thing you need to do is be a great leader. Let me explain that to you. Let me just sit down for just a moment. At my age, it's a highlight. Let me just sit down for a moment and let's go back to the law of the lid. Remember when your lid was a 5, what was your company going to be? It was going to be a... Absolutely. The lid says you can't have a 6, you can't have a 7, you can't have an 8, you can't have a 9. You're a 5 leader. A 5 leader doesn't have 7s. A 5 leader doesn't have 8 companies. 5 leader doesn't have 9. 5 leaders have 4 companies. What kind of a person will you attract? If you're a 5 leader, you don't attract 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s. Can I tell you something? 8s don't want to follow 5s. 8s go meet a 5 and they say, whoops, Mr. Magoo. Oh. So how do you attract better people? Lift your lid. If you're a 5, you get 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. If you're a 6, you get 5, 4s, 3s, 2s. If you're a 7, you get 6. If you're an 8, you got this? Stanford research says, just came from there, Stanford research says that 85% of everything you know, you learn visually. 85%. The reason I say that the first rule of 5 in leadership is leading yourself is because visual example is the most powerful leadership tool. Axe to cut down your tree. Trust me with that. James Allen said, people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but they're not anxious to improve themselves. And they therefore remain bound. The first person that you should teach leadership values to is you. The first person that should flesh out leadership is you. The first person that makes the decision to go forward is you. Lead yourself. I will promise you, start there. Start small. Start with you. When I was 25, I made a very important leadership decision that literally has changed my life. When I was 25, I made a decision that as a teacher, I would never teach something I didn't 100% believe. And what that meant was I did a lot of things, I had a lot of subjects I didn't teach on. Are you with me? But I realized that the power, the life change, the passion all comes out of living it yourself. And once you start living it yourself, it is so amazing how people will begin to follow you. So don't leave this conference and go back and say, oh, let me tell you what I learned. No, don't tell them what you learned. Show them what you learned. My mentor for many, many years, John Wooden, used to say to me, John, I would look at my players at UCLA and I would say to my players, don't tell me what you're going to do. Show me what you're going to do. Number one on the rule of 5 for lifting your leadership lid is lead yourself. You got that one, don't you, huh? I can tell you got it. You are the smartest crowd I've talked to today. So the question is, not only do I grow, but what do I grow in? And what I grow in is what I call the big picture. I think there are 4 things that allow people to be successful. And I think these 4 things you've got to be good at. You've got to be good at relationships. In other words, you've got to connect with people. People won't go along with you if they can't get along with you. You just got to be good with relationships. You've got to be good with equipping people. You've got to know how to train and develop people, because you can't compound anything in your life unless you get somebody else to do it with you. So all compounding is in training and equipping. You've got to be good in attitude, because attitude, if it's good, will let you overcome adversity, which everyone has, and if it's bad, it'll let adversity overcome you, and you've got to be good in leadership. You've got to be able to influence more people. Now, I think those 4 things you just got to be good at, regardless of what your profession is, what your calling is, what your career is. You better be good with relationships, you better be good with equipping, you better be good with attitude, and you better be good with leadership. At age 25, I decided those were the 4 keys to continual success in a person's life. And then, when I started writing books, I said, I'll write about those 4 things all the time. If it's a John Maxwell book, it's in those areas right there, because that's the key to people's success. What keeps people buying my books is I'm constantly writing about something that will make them better. And it works for them. Now, you take those 4 things, plus take your giftedness or your strengths. You ought to grow in that area. Whatever you're gifted in. For example, I'm gifted in communication, so I read a lot of books on communication. So whatever your strength is, you want to, but your growth has to be focused on those 4 or 5 things in your life. Now, it doesn't mean you can't grow in any other thing. It just means your greatest return for growth will be if you stay in those sweet spots. And then you need to measure your growth, because what gets measured gets done. And so every year at the end of the year, I ask myself, how well did I do in this area? Am I getting better? Am I growing? Am I developing myself? How can I measure that? And then, how can I apply what I'm learning? Because the moment that I learn something, the question I have is, how can I now apply that to my life, and how can I pass it on to the people that are on my team? That's how a leader thinks. How do I apply it to me? How do I pass it on to my people? That's why I'm so excited about you being here, because you all represent hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. And everything that you're learning, you're saying, okay, here's how I apply this to me. This is how I work in my life. How do I apply it to the people on my team? And that's what we're here to help you do. We're here to help resource you to not only learn these principles yourself, but to learn them for your people. And then after I do all of that, I become intentional in the following things. Number 1 is I make growth my number 1 priority in my life. A day without growing is unacceptable to me. So I'm conscious of my need 24/7 to grow. And I'm constantly doing it. Number 2, I look for growth opportunities in every situation. I not only make it my number 1 priority, but I ask myself, okay, what kind of growth opportunities are around me? Have I taken advantage of growth opportunities? Growth conversations. Number 3, I ask questions that will help me grow. Growth doesn't come looking for me. I have got to be proactive. So I ask questions all the time about growth. And I'm asking, if I'm with you, I'm going to ask you, what are you reading? Who are you talking to? What experiences has caused you to grow? I'm just asking you questions all the time. I'll drive you crazy with questions. The last time Jim Collins and I got together, we were speaking at the same convention out in Las Vegas. We were having lunch, and he sat down, and I sat down, and I kid you not. We sat down, and we looked at each other, and we both pulled out our card. It was like quick draw McGraw here. And we just leaned forward because we knew we had an hour and 15 minutes. We were going to cut all the other stuff out. He had questions asked me, I had questions asked him, and I threw out the first question. He said, that's not fair. He said, I have questions. I said, but I was first. So I get the first question. And we went back and forth, question. Why did we do that? Because Jim Collins and I know something. The only growing we're going to do isn't talking about where we've been, what we've done, who we know. Are you not tired of all that stuff? The only growing we're going to do is asking questions to the other person
and learning from that person. Everything I've learned has become a result of a question, not a result of an answer. So you got to constantly have this curious mind to ask questions. So I ask questions that will help me grow. I file what I learn every day. Every day I take what I'm learning and I file it in my iPhone. I put categories on it and I put it in there, what I'm learning and how I'm growing. And I make sure as soon as I learn something from you, I put it in my iPhone immediately. Because the number one time waster is looking for things that are lost. And you know why you lost them? You didn't have a place to put them in the first place. So my systems give me the place to put things so I don't lose them, so that I can go back to them and I can learn from them and I can grow from it. And then I pass on to others every day. I pass on to others what I'm learning. I can hardly wait to tell somebody else, because every time I pass on to others what I've just learned, it reinforces the learning in me. And it allows me to kind of put that just a little stronger in my life, that impression just a little bit deeper in my life. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up by, I love this. Some parents of a little girl named Elizabeth Dodd, who was age 9, her parents would listen to my teachings. They had video programs, and they were always listening, reading my books. And so their 9-year-old daughter was just kind of hanging with them and picking up this stuff. And so this was written by Elizabeth Dodd, who's age 9. She said, John Maxwell says, always work on yourself more than others. He also says, always work on yourself before you work on others. I say, hey, he's right. Because if you work on others before yourself, you won't know what you're doing. Elizabeth Dodd, age 9. I thought, the kid gets it. The kid gets it. I hope we get it today. I hope we get it. People know me for leadership, but I'm passionate for growth. And the reason I'm passionate for growth is if you're going to develop the leader within you, trust me, it's going to be because you want to get better every day. And what's so beautiful is if you'll do this, in 1 year, to be honest with you, you won't recognize yourself. You'll have to reintroduce yourself to yourself. And you're going to have to say, I'm amazed how much you've grown in a year. What keeps me young is my passion to grow. I just don't have time to die. And it's so good, I don't want to die. That's what I want for you.
Well, the last thing I'll just share, and this is more personal, and I know you have a client that you can talk a little bit about this too. For me, is I begin to look at my growth this year and I go, man, I really want to do a better job of leading leaders. Like I have a pretty good system, connection and leading individual contributors. But I think when you lead leaders of other people and other teams, that I think that's much, I know it's much different. And so that has been something that I've been doing a lot of work on, a lot of research. What does that look like? How do you lead differently in that area? Talk a little bit about what you're hearing out in the field in regards to that with people. You know, it's amazing. We read all the time that people get promoted to their first leadership position ever with no training. Right? The percentages are off the chart. And then they get in there and still organizations don't develop them. And then all of a sudden, if you're lucky enough to have enough initiative and intentionality behind your growth, you're growing. All of a sudden, now you got to start leading leaders and you've never been taught. So this is coming up more and more with organizations as people move up the ranks. Talk a little bit about your perspective on this one.
Yeah, John calls, you went from being a soloist to being the conductor of the orchestra. I have no idea how to conduct, but I do know how to be a soloist. So I'll be super soloist, and I'm not effective conductor at all. So we've been talking a lot about we're trained very much since youth at a leader-follower model. You're the leader, I'm the follower, yada, yada, yada. Tell you what if we thought leader, and you're the leader, but you're also incenting me to think like a leader. Most of our fault in this area is we all think of leadership, we're trained to think of leadership as title and position. What we teach is leadership is influence. So it really doesn't matter if you have a title or position. We should all be developing influence. Yeah. So for me, if I'm a leader leading individual contributors, those individual contributors need to think that they are leaders. What are they doing to increase their influence with me, up, with their peers across? They don't have anybody down yet, but they can be developing influence and thinking about leadership in that. And so doing those small things to infuse leadership into your team. You mentioned a while back about having, reviewing a podcast, 5 minutes, 10 minutes on your call. We have one in an organization that reads the Maxwell Daily Reader. 365, it's a 1 page or 2 paragraphs. Takes about, I don't know, we witnessed it, you and I witnessed it last week, 2 weeks ago. Would it take about 7 minutes, 6 minutes? Yeah. And that included discussion.
But
the entire team is on one topic for 6 minutes. Does it matter in that day? No, but it happens day by day.
Every
And
day.
over the year, 365 of those readings, I guarantee you somebody took something from there to apply to their leadership. So small things done daily, consistently over time, big results. But getting leaders to think about others, about leading leaders, is a huge jump in the engagement and performance of your team, because if they're sitting around waiting for you to lead, that's problematic.
Yeah.
It's not going to drive engagement.
I love the example you just talked about, the daily reader. And what was awesome was the leader of that team was not even the one
Right.
reading it.
Right.
Right.
They pass it around.
Right. It's like, hey, pass it around, and you begin. And what's awesome to watch in that shift that's happened in that culture is highly driven by results, highly driven. And they would have stand-up huddles in their offices all around the country. And it would all be about, hey, what was the production yesterday? And then all of a sudden, like, hey, we're still going to do that. That's important, but that's going to be number two. Number one's going to be, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership. We're going to talk about people. And you begin to see that shift, and people begin to think like leaders. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you just want people around you that feel like they're the owner, right? They lead, they spend money as if it was their money. Yeah. They make decisions as if it was their business. And you begin thinking, how do I lead people to get to that point?
I'm going to jump out of order because that just triggers another question that I had. So I'm going to jump down to number 5, where he said you're out of your comfort zone. And because it's just exactly what you're talking about. And we got to spend a little bit of time together a few weeks ago in Las Vegas at an exchange that John does in a different city every year. But this year it was in the city of Las Vegas. And it didn't even feel like we were in Las Vegas, really, because we experienced that city so uniquely as we do at Exchange. We experience whatever city we're in very uniquely. But what I said to you a little bit beforehand, before we came in here, before we started recording, was that I got to hear you and John taught from the stage. And I got to hear a version of you that was I've heard you over the last now almost 11 years speak with John many, many, many times, both on stage and just personally. But this was different. This was a culmination. I mean, you are very open and honest about everything on the podcast of what you're going through in your leadership journey. But this was you sharing what you were learning. And I took notes, and I felt like how perfect this lesson was with what we just talked about, what you and John had just talked about, and when you taught on the lesson on how to be an innovator. And as I heard a new version of you emerge in your teaching that could have only come from being in a very intense growth season. I want to read a little bit from my notes that I took of what you said with our podcast listeners. And then I would love to hear from you as I ask this question. But the notes that I took said, when John talked about fencing out and expanding your fences, that everything that you need but don't have is on the other side of your comfort zone. And he talked about you need to jump the fence in order to get it. You guys also expanded on this fence idea. And John said, innovators challenge preconceived beliefs and biases and assumptions. Be ridiculously curious. And then you talked about you need to jump over the fence to be exposed. Stop hanging with the same people. Don't bring bad stuff back over the fence. Get to other people. They know something you don't know. Get out of the same circle that you've been in. So from those notes that I took with you and John up there on stage, where have you gone in this season, this particularly uncomfortable season of your leadership? Where have you gone to get what you don't have? And what was it that you needed?
Yeah, so I love this question. I will tell you where I went first, Tracy. I went into myself. Because I was exhibiting characteristics, I was exhibiting mindsets that concerned me in my ability to have the emotional capacity to get through to where I needed to go. And so I went through myself, Tracy, and I said, okay, is this an emotional instability issue? Or am I allowing my perspective to change just because things are not easy? No leader expects things to always be easy. Then they wouldn't need leaders. In fact, I love Jake. Thank you. Jake is such a contributor to this podcast. You guys have no idea. Jake, our podcast producer, just put up for me right in front of me. He said, don't hope things get easier. Make sure you get better. And I think, Jake, I would agree with that, Tracy, because when this year, I've spent much of the year wishing things would get easier or trying to figure out why they felt so tough, and only to find out that it was not an emotional issue or an emotional capacity. It was a mental thing to where I did not have the perspective that I needed to get where I was going. And I came up with about 3 or 4 ahas in the last 60 days. And then what I did when I got settled in who I was, one of the ahas was COVID did not change this fact about Mark Cole. I'm a good leader. Now, y'all don't agree, don't disagree. Don't put in the comments whether you agree or disagree. This is about me getting inside of myself. I had to go in and say, Mark Cole, what do you really believe about your leadership? You know why? Because my emotions was making me feel like a good leader, bad leader, good leader, bad leader, good leader, bad leader. Every other day, I had changed what I thought about my leadership because I was listening to my emotions. Well, then I calmed my emotions down and felt really good about emotional stability. And then I found out that I was questioning it in my mind. Am I a good leader? Should I be leading this thing? Is this too big for me? Am I not overcoming because I don't have the capacity, the mental, the experiential capacity to overcome? And Tracy, I had to quiet the lies. And I found that the only way to quiet the accusations or the lies in my head was to get established a couple of things. One, I'm a great leader. That won't change with the rise and fall of this initiative that I'm leading. I'm a good leader. Two, I had to get clear on what I knew was my purpose. For me, we put a lot of spiritual foundation into our leadership, as all of you on the podcast know. This doesn't work for all of you. I had to make sure that my calling was sure. I had to get settled that success was not the indicator of my calling. That overcoming wasn't even the success of my calling. I've known a lot of people, they were called and they left it all out on the field and didn't get to see the finished product of their work. Success and finishing well is not an indicator of a calling lived well. You've got to leave it all out on the field. Sometimes you don't get to determine the results. Others, society. Some of you got let go recently in 2023 and you go, how could I have succeeded when I was surprised? I was ambushed by a termination, by a transition. Don't allow those things to determine how well you are leading, how successful you are in leading, and how committed you are to your calling. And I had to get some things settled, Tracy. When I got it settled in my head, and it had to start there, I had to be bigger on the inside. Then I was ready to go to my inner circle and my outer circle. I went to John and said, John, this is what I've just been processing. This is my conclusions. This is what I'm going to do with the conclusions. I validated the direction and the conclusions with people that knew me well. Then what I did, Tracy, I went to people that had no idea and was very unfamiliar with my leadership. And I said, hey, this is what 2023, this is what the current leadership challenge has been for me. What was it like for you? And some of these were very, very successful people running billion-dollar organizations. And they went, this truly happened. They went, do you know I never admitted to anyone in the middle of my fights that are just like yours. I never admitted, and I stayed in it longer because I wouldn't admit to people the struggle, the challenge, and the commitment to overcome. And Tracy, for me, that was incredible because I saw people that I hold in high regard, number one, admit something they never admitted before to anyone else. I struggled big time too. But number two, I realized I was on a good track because I found a safe place to admit it with people that could help me become a better leader.
That's so good. That's so good.
You know, and it's understanding those differences and then leading from those. John has a statement that says everything rises and falls on leadership. It's one of the reasons that I'm so excited to have you and John Maxwell share a stage with Marcus Buckingham.
I love Marcus, by the way. I always pitch his books. Now Discover Your Strengths. I made my entire company read it. So, yeah.
Hey, so listen to this. So I will tell him that so that when we're together in Atlanta, he brings you a commission check, okay?
Okay.
We'll just make sure since you've sold so many books for him.
I love it.
In this statement of everything rises and falls on leadership, again, I've been following you because of girls. I'm a girl dad. I've been following you for some time as a small jewelry business to where you're now a global fashion brand. What role has leadership played in that?
You know, I think you have to lead by example, right? And, you know, we live and die by our core values. And some people put core values down on a wall in their break room. It's kind of just words on a page. For us, we live and die by it. It's our North Star. And it's three very simple things. It's family, it's fashion, and it's philanthropy. Family is very simple. I'm a mom first. Before I was a CEO and chairwoman, before I was a designer, I was a young mom to a little baby. And I wanted to create a business that allowed me to be a present mother, that allowed me to be there for all the moments in my son's life, and to create a business that allowed other moms and dads to have that same ability, that you shouldn't have to choose between your work and your career, that work and your career can blend together. Your family can be part of your business instead of having this big separation. So family was our number number one core pillar. Then how we represented that in business was, I want my employees to make sure they take care of their families first. So I'm going to be flexible with them, whether that's a flexible work schedule or when they come to the office, making sure I had mother's nursing rooms for all of our new moms, and mother's milk refrigerators, and a workout center, and a playroom for their kiddos if they needed to come after school and play, and created a family unit where we supported and loved one another. And then the second piece of that is, well, how does that mean for our customers? We treat her and him like our family, like our brothers and our sisters. If your sister has a broken earring, Mark, what do? You fix it, right? You take care of her. And that's our customer service policy. It's the sister rule. It's so simple. And we give every single employee within our organization the power to please, to make sure in that moment that that person is loved and listened to and taken care of, that they don't have to go to a manager for approval or call someone to get, we are going to take care of it in that moment. So our family pillar guides us in all those elements, all those layers, from how we treat each other to how we treat our customers and how we treat our own families. And then our fashion pillar is pretty simple. We're passionate about design and fashion, and we're motivated to design products that don't just make people look good. They make people feel good. And they're for these moments in their life that we get to be part of. On their wedding day, walking down the aisle, on graduation from high school, and whatever birthday celebrations within our stores. So we've started to become in some of the most important moments of people's lives and how they're touched in those moments. Our brand is fortunate enough to be a part of that. And then when you look at philanthropy, I started this business because of what my stepfather taught me. I wanted to have a brand that was fashion for philanthropy. And I believed wholeheartedly that I could create something and give back. When I started with just $500, I had no money. I couldn't write big checks to nonprofits, but I could make a pair of earrings for a silent auction for a nonprofit. I could make a necklace for a raffle. I could donate my time to read books with kids at the hospital. And the more that I was able to grow, the more we were able to do. And hiring people that we said, this is our goal. This is how we measure success at Kendra Scott, is that we are making a positive impact on the world and the communities around us. Since 2010, Mark, we have donated over $60 million to women's and children's charities. And everyone told me that that was truly an impossible thing to accomplish. And I'm here to show you that it's not, because when you give authentically is key, because you can check the philanthropy box. But when you give with your heart, when you show up, when your team shows up, you have a committed customer base that is with you for life and has been able to help us weather the storms of recessions or pandemics, because we have an army of people who care for one another truly. And it's not just lip service.
You know, I'm going to come back to philanthropy because I want to hear what you're doing at the store level, at the local level, before we close out.
Did you see my cup, by the way?
Let's see it.
Optimism.
Yes, yes. And by the way, if you didn't already have a great excuse to go to the YouTube channel to watch this for all of you listeners.
I didn't realize that was the cup I had today with my tea in it, that it says Optimist.
It's a beautiful cup. I just love the cup.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.